Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome back to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yahweh's last days witness, Yisrael Hawkins. 3 interesting articles to talk about this week. The first being some very cold body language shown by 2 of the top world leaders. Katan, these 2 were hardly able to make eye contact.
Jeff, if there was any love or unity in working problems out between these 2 leaders, it surely seemed like it grew cold at this interview. In fact, in Los Cabos, Mexico, 2 of the world's most powerful leaders, U.S. President Barack Obama and Russian President Vladimir Putin, members of the quartet, met at a G20 summit. Now, this was their first meeting since Mr. Putin returned to the Russian presidency last month. CBS's Nora O'Donnell stated their meeting lasted 2 hours because they were talking about Syria and didn't want to stop talking about Syria. The concern on everyone's mind is, did these 2 leaders reach a common ground on the Syrian issue? Well, that, Jeff, was a little bit harder to discern.
At a press conference after the meeting, the 2 leaders barely even looked at each other. President Obama stated from their meeting on Syria, "We agree that we need to see a cessation of violence, that a political process has to be created to prevent civil war and the kind of horrific deaths that we've seen over the last several weeks." Now, despite those statements on what they agreed upon, their body language told a different story on how divided they still are on the topic of Syria.
Under former Russian President Medvedev, U.S. and Russia relations had become more friendly. But Russia's support of the Assad regime has caused a rift. The Syrian port city of Tartus is home to Russia's only naval base in the Mediterranean. Now, according to CBS, 2 Russian ships are in the Black Sea and are loading what is believed to be arms and ammunition in an attempt to secure that base. There is also reports of a 3rd ship carrying Mi-25 attack helicopters is already on its way to Syria. The Obama administration has said the window is closing for Assad to relinquish power and that Russia can still play a constructive role. It has yet to be seen if these 2 leaders can come up with and agree on a plan that will actually end the violence.
Now, recently the U.S. announced India, South Korea, Turkey, Taiwan, South Africa, Sri Lanka, and Malaysia had been added to a list of nations that have agreed to cut purchases of Iranian crude in return for exemption from sanctions. This leaves China as Iran's final big customer. While the United States government is putting the pressure on any country that would still purchase high volumes of oil from Iran, China is vocalizing its condemnation of this embargo and standing firm on its position not to join.
Foreign Ministry spokesman Liu Weimin spoke to reporters the day after the U.S. made its announcement, saying China has consistently opposed one country using its own laws to impose unilateral sanctions on another country, and using those sanctions on a third country is even more unacceptable. We think China's trade with Iran is totally legal and reasonable. We have already explained our position very clearly to the U.S.
The new sanctions law was passed by the U.S. government at the end of 2011 and is scheduled to go into effect at the end of June 2012. Until now, any country not reducing its oil purchases from Iran has been warned that if they continue to do oil business with Iran after June, it could lead to banking penalties from the U.S. America's goal in significantly hurting Iran's oil trade is to force Iran to stop working on its nuclear program, which the U.S. believes is to develop nuclear weapons. But we know that Iran insists and has always insisted the program is strictly for civilian and peaceful purposes.
Now, earlier this year, China did reduce its imports of oil from Iran. However, this was due to a pricing dispute and not the Chinese government leaning toward joining the U.S.'s position. It is believed that at the rate China has been recently importing crude from Iran, they will soon meet or exceed past levels purchased.
In an interview with Press TV, Wu Bingbing, a spokesman for Peking University, further explains how China and Iran are going to remain close. He states, "I have to emphasize that oil is not everything there is to China and Iran's relations. You cannot take a few months' trade figures and use them as a barometer of bilateral relations to conclude that China is responding to American pressure by submitting to its demands. This doesn't take into account the long-term or strategic aspects to our relationship."
While China values its friendship with the U.S., experts say it also supports an independent Iran without American influence in the Middle East and Central Asia. Last week, Russia, China, and the 4 Central Asian countries of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization declared their unanimous opposition to the United States' unilateral sanctions and outside military actions against both Iran and Syria. In other words, they're in agreement to disagree with the United States.
Exactly. Well, from hurt not the oil to hurt not our lifestyle. Katan, this last article deals with just one problem we see from the lifestyle chosen by so many today that is now affecting children. YPN's Larry McGee is looking into this report on hypertension. Larry, I thought high blood pressure was just an adult problem.
Sadly, that is no longer the case, Jeff. And in fact, a new study released just this week reports that over the last decade, hospital visits for children with high blood pressure has almost doubled to over 24,000 per year. And as an example, 14-year-old Kyle Munchler has been hospitalized 4 times for high blood pressure. And as a result, he has been prescribed 4 medications. And his mother, Lynette, closely monitors everything he consumes. In Kyle's own words, it is definitely a much different lifestyle than what the average person lives. He has to maintain a certain diet, exercise regularly, and monitor his blood pressure very carefully. The study, released this week, examined a number of children like Kyle who've been hospitalized for high blood pressure. The increase in cases has also produced a 50% rise in treatment costs, totaling over $3 billion. Dr. Rick Caskell of Montefiore Hospital, who is a pediatric kidney specialist, conveys that 70% of his new patients have high blood pressure. To quote, Dr. Caskell says, "We have all seen it. We've seen it associated with the marked increase in obesity, but not to these numbers." And he believes that the hospitalization rate is really the most astounding part of this story. At present, many researchers believe obesity to be the major factor, and this in addition to genetics and environment, which are also suspected causes. For children like Kyle, however, the cause has yet to be identified, but by virtue of the increase in technology, Kyle is able to utilize his phone, which contains a specially adapted computer application to monitor his blood pressure and email the results to his doctor for study. The ultimate concern, however, seems to focus not so much on the present, but the future. According to Dr. Caskell, the elevated blood pressure earlier on is having a deteriorative effect on the children's organs. And by the time they reach adulthood, the damage is done, it may be irreversible, and could possibly lead to cardiovascular disease as well. To offer a parting note, Dr. John Lepoke reports that over the last generation, we've seen more than a tripling in the rate of childhood obesity. So it is not surprising that we are also seeing surges in conditions believed to be related to obesity, such as high blood pressure and diabetes. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan, Jeff, back to you.
Wow, Jeff, that ties right into the prophecy that the Savior said that we would see these pestilences and diseases increasing in this last generation. This is just more solid proof to those who believe that the prophecies written in the Holy Scriptures are 100% accurate without a shadow of a doubt. And Jeff, as we continually bring these articles, it confirms the establishment of the work that Yisrael Hawkins and the House of Yahweh would do in these last days. Foretell the events concerning the times, and the dividing of times, and warning the people of this world to come out from among them. Now, as the world scratches their heads for solutions and nations bully each other into submission, Yisrael Hawkins is bringing the peaceful solution from Yahweh, the creator of the universe. So continue to watch as Yisrael Hawkins foretells Bible prophecies. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thanks for watching.